Okay, guys, Sam back with you here on Wednesday, October 24th, and our final of the trio today is going to be ZRX, OX to Bitcoin. Now, interestingly, for members here, we had just looked at OX yesterday in the GAN training that we did, so this will be a review. We'll look at it both, well, see if we can adapt some of the GAN training that we did yesterday and then put an Elliott count on it, see if we can make the best of the two of them. So this is ZRX to Bitcoin on Binance. This is a 4-hour chart, and you can see we've had this. Right, when did we pivot up here? May of 18, and we've come down. I'm not really trying to connect the two of these. Whatever this is completed, and now I've had a 3-wave ABC that's fairly clean to correct it, and potentially now we have something getting started here. So I've already got a count on here. It's very hard to miss this. So whether you think of this as a trend line, and I've drawn it as a channel here, but just from pivot to pivot, we only need 2 touches to create a tradable trend line. So what's very common actually here is for if we break the trend line is to come back and test it. And it looks like that may be what we're doing here. So on the assumption that we've got a low here that we can work from, I'm going to go down to, let's go to the 1 hour, see how this looks coming off of that low. Well, it's not the prettiest thing I've ever seen, but it's definitely a contender here as some sort of a completed motive wave. Right, so here, if I have it correctly identified here, this would overlap our 1, so we'd have to call this a completed leading diagonal. All right, so we have our 1, 2, ABC into the 3rd, some sort of ABC down for the 4. Now, one thing that will help identify as to what we have here, when we're looking at a diagonal, we want to look for a relationship on the 4, for the 4 relative to the start of the 1 through the 3. So if I just grab my retracement tool and go from the start of the 1 up through the 3, and I got to change my tool. Well, actually, you can see it right there. So but let me do it in the format that you're familiar with. So from here, I go back to my measured move. So if I get right on there, all right, so you see that? So what I'm doing is taking the start of the 1 through the pivot of the proposed 3, looking for ideally you're looking for the 50 at the 4, right? So we got through it a hair. Point of control is right there. So looking here, this is a reasonable candidate for the 4, and then up we go, a couple of ticks in front of the algo target. So whether or not you're putting an Elliott count on this or not, swing low, swing high, back to the 50, boom, algo target. So something has completed there. So we can now operate on the assumption that with that completed motive wave, the next target will be a full 50 of that completed structure. So swing low to swing high. And here's where we're looking for our 50. So, whoops, if we're looking for this. So we're going to have to break through this channel to get down to this level. Now, we note here, anywhere from the 50 to the 618, that's our prime zone for a wave 2, if indeed we've got a completed 1 wave here in this diagonal structure. If we're going to come back down, set up the 2, well, it's hard not to notice this, but of course we'd also have this structural potentially now, just some market structure there to offer some resistance. That's pretty much, this is going to be a little high, right? We may be running into that right now. So if I use them, if I use them all, this dominance here, it looks like that's my 4 before heading down. This would be the 4 of the 3. So I like to wick these off and see if they're going to come in and influence the market. So this is somewhat interesting in that if indeed we've got this completed, this would be too shallow. So even though it's tempting to look there and go, oh, you got the trend line coming into play, you got the 38, is it possible? Of course, yeah, it's certainly possible that we would just, from this test here of the trend line, that we would start kicking again. But is it most probable? No, we know the most probable location for this retracement to complete is down here between the 50 and the 618. So that additionally would set up an algo on our side. So buy side algo is going to kick in there at that 50, defend to the 618. So we get new targets up here. So the first target would be up here. Oh, what do we? We'll call it 1850 approximately. So we've got a couple of different things here. Also, look at this nice. Looks like you've got the same sort of nice structure here going. Well, let's see. I'm just going to be too skinny here, but I've got this well, I'm going to do it this way, actually. So there's two ways to draw a channel. You can connect the tops or the bottom. So I like these two coming down here. That's kind of interesting to me. If we're going to break that, then I would draw from here. And, well, then I would do it differently. So from here, I would take the 2 to the 4. Right, come here. Get it right on that pivot. And then we'd come here. Now, so the assumption is we're going to break this channel. We're going to come down. We're going to bump into the channel defined from these pivots. So if we're coming down here, this sets up pretty nicely here to test that channel. Now you could do it, right? You could do it with a pitchfork as well. So we could take the low here. We could go up to our wave 1 high, bring it over to our 2. Well, let's see. I'm going to take the channel off so you get the idea here. And it's not perfect, right? So the 1.5 seems to be catching it. Looks like there's a little bit of influence here around the median line, but really the trade has already come and gone, because here was your corner pocket, which was hit the 80% was realized quickly right here. Right, again and again, got the upper parallel, and then we got the 1.5 beyond the upper parallel. So the trade here has already been realized. Now, as we come back down, doesn't look like it's as much in play here. So I would defer now to the channel. It's just really a function of what's easier on the eye. So if I go here to here, it just looks a little less cluttered. So I like this. So I would put an alert here on this line here, so or just before we tag that line, as to whether or not we're going to make it to the 50, or potentially there's a front run off of some of this structure. So that would be an area, so you could really shrink this whole thing down and say, when we get here, I want to know about it. Right, at least I want an alert to identify. So is there anything here? Could this be an A, little B going in? Well, we can open that up and see how that looks, and so we can get a target. Maybe we've got this under play. So if we go from our swing high to our swing low here, well, here's the 50. Well, now look there. Interesting. So here's the 50, so we know an algo kicked in the cell. We don't have to wonder what happened there, right? So swing high, swing low, there's the 50. Look where their target is, right in line with the box we just drew. So if this is going to play and it's going to continue to come down, now I'm just building a strong case here. So look at the confluence I get here. So I have the structural prior resistance potentially offering support. I'm at a 50 with an algo target here, and I've got an upsloping channel to offer me that structure. You can think of it as a trend line. I'm just doing it as a channel. So I want to know about that. So if we're going to get there, and we want a long position, so if I'm going to front run the entry by a few ticks, right? Always want to front run, don't want to be right on it. There's our first algo target, right? So making no assumptions about this going 1, 2, 3. If that were the case, then this would be, the targets would be much higher, right? It would be way up here. So that first one, that gives us 9 to 1. If we were to go to into a true impulse, what do we got there? That's 18, almost 19 to 1. Right now, I'm not saying, it's possible, right? So if this is a 1, this is going to be our 2 at the 50. Well, just standard ops, we know that the high probability zone for a third. So if I draw it up, so if that's a completed 1 and I'm going to hit the 2, let's say we hit the, well, we'll hit it right here at this entry spot where we've got our location. So here we're not even to the 1618. All right, that would be a front run on the 50. So here's your high probability zone. If it's going to turn into a wave 3 at the 1618, now you've got 21 to 1. As I like to say, why would you not take that trade? Right? Look, the risk is tight, right? No reason to give that a whole lot of room. You could go, if you wanted to give it maximum, you could go underneath that structural support. You're still at 10 to 1. You would get under the 65. But I mean so certainly if this is a completed 1, we know the 2 can go that deep. So if you wanted to give this maximum amount of room, you'd want to be underneath the 65. So then, of course, that's going to change our numbers. So if we get up to our 1618, what does that give me? Well, there's 7 to 1, assuming you want to give it that much risk. So it's obviously always a function of how much risk you want to give it. First algo target, which would catch the channel pivot or the channel projection, now you're at 3.3 to 1 on the assumption you're giving it that much room. So one thought is you could take a smaller position here and give it that maximum distance. If we start to move away from it, if we get the turn, then no reason to leave that much risk. So then you could tighten up and you'd be looking for an opportunity. If you get that, then I would tighten up to underneath the 50 on the assumption that you have identified the pivot, right? So you came down here, you got into that hot box, and then we moved away. Once you've moved away, there's no reason to maintain all of that risk because we're making the assumption now that we've got the pivot. So that, of course, changes that dramatically. So then there, and then now you're looking at 8.75 to 1. So that's the idea of getting a piece of it down here, but not so much so that the risk, it's just too much for the account size, right? So you look here and you go 3.2 to 1. Well, nothing wrong with that. But you'd be looking if it's going to go that high, just for the sake of discussion. If we were going to get a 1, 2, 3, well, there's going to be opportunities to add along the way. All right, so that's how I would play that, and I like to look at this. All right, so it was interesting. We looked at this yesterday. So again, I'll refer you over to Coin Checkup here. The reason we were looking at this yesterday in the training, I was just trying to randomly pick some coins in crypto so we could work through our GAN training, and I picked OX simply because it was number 2. It was number 2 on their algo score, and as I recall, if I went to market overview, I think it was an exact fig number. So if I sort them based on their algo score, right? Here's OX at number 2. Well, yesterday it was about 62% off the low. So it was literally sitting. So you can see here, Ethereum Classic is at 78.6 from the all-time high, right? Monero. So these were the ones that we looked at, Monero and ZRX yesterday, due to the fact that we were sitting at retracement levels from the all-time high that were exact fib numbers. I think this was at 62 yesterday. So now we've gone a little further through that, right? So you come back here and you go, well, wait a minute, what is that going to do to, how is that affecting my chart and where I may be going? Well, we're still potentially now just putting in the 2 wave here, but that was the reason we were looking at it. So you have a strong project here. We've got, at least, unlike so much of the alts, we at least have a motive wave. We have the potential for a 1 wave there. So just sit and let this thing come in, right? Don't chase it. It's right. If you miss it, right? So let's say it turns, right? That's not the time to chase it, right? Let me pull that off. So if we come down here and let's say we pivot here and it starts to go, well, that you don't want to chase it. Right, you need to wait for the next move, the next retracement. Chasing it, oh shit. I mean, you can, right? So I mean, you're adding to the risk. So if it starts to move away and you're kind of late, well, now look what you're doing to your risk profile. Well, now all of this has to move up, right? So now you're here. Now you're going, well, where am I putting the stop? Under the pivot, right? Doesn't look as good here. So then you're distorting your. Let's come back here. So if I just, first target would be algo target, now you're at 2.4 to 1. It's not good enough, right? So you're going to go all the way to the 618. Now you're at 1.2 to 1. Again, so you want to try and catch them on the turn there with a tight stop, anticipating that you've identified the pivot. Right, so I would be cautious about chasing this. If it doesn't come down here, we want to buy, right? So standard ops, we want to buy when it's coming down and it hits some support. We don't want to buy it when it's going up. Right, that's paying retail. We want to wait till it's on sale. So can I get it at 50% off? Right, that's the idea. If you want to simplify the thinking, right? I don't want to pay retail. I want to get it at 50% off. Right? Okay, guys. That at least you got something there to work with in terms of a setup here. This is definitely worth noting here. So I'd want to be alerted. I'd want an alert to go off, send it to my phone, text me, do something. Let me know if I start approaching this target, so I can take a look and see if I'm interested in being a buyer there. That's how I would trade it. All right, guys, that'll wrap. As always, you can learn more about everything that we teach, and we have been adding a lot of content of late. So you can always learn more. Go to our website, follow us on Twitter. Lots of opportunities there. We engage with our Twitter community on a pretty regular basis. There's links if you want to learn more about our membership underneath this video. And we have the free Discord as well. If you just want to put a toe in the water, kind of engage with a few of the senseis and some of the other people that are in there. All right, guys. So with that, I will wrap it. We'll call it a day. I'll be back to you.